Jesus taught people through his stories and through his actions. This is a picture showing Jesus and a tree from a story you heard last fall. Jesus became the friend of Zacchaeus, who was so short that he had to climb up in a sycamore tree to try and see Jesus. He was a tax collector and not liked by very many people. Jesus went to have a meal with Zacchaeus. By becoming his friend, Jesus showed how important it was to care for others. Jesus was a teacher and a good friend. This happened in Jericho as Jesus and his disciples were passing through on their way to Jerusalem to celebrate the Passover festival. When Jesus arrived in Jerusalem, something exciting happened that involved branches from a different kind of tree. A great crowd of people came to meet him as he rode into the city on a donkey. People were wild with joy at this chance to see him. Some pulled off their coats and put them on the ground to make a carpet for him to ride over. Others cut branches from the nearby palm trees and waved them joyously. They formed a great, happy parade following Jesus to the temple. When Abraham and Sarah arrived in a new land, they built an altar, a special place to worship God. In Palestine, where Jesus lived, people worshipped in synagogues. But every year at Passover time, Jesus and his disciples went to worship at the big temple in Jerusalem. Jesus spent many hours there teaching people about God's love. He angered the leaders by overturning the tables of the money changers, who were cheating the people and making the temple like a market rather than a place of worship. In Bible times, kings were anointed with oil to show that they were chosen by God. When Jesus was born, he was called the Messiah, which means the Anointed One. During that week in Jerusalem, Jesus stayed each night with Mary, Martha, and Lazarus at their home in Bethany, a small town near Jerusalem. One night, Mary poured an expensive oil over Jesus' head to soothe him. Mary loved Jesus very much and wanted to do something special for him. Jesus told his friends, "Mary has done a beautiful thing for me. The whole world will remember this gift that she has given." When water came from the rock, the Israelites knew that God was with them. As the disciples lived and worked with Jesus, they began to see that Jesus was like that water. Jesus was God's Son, God's presence in our world. The night before Jesus died, he had a special Last Supper with his disciples. Before they ate, Jesus took a basin of water and towel and washed the disciples' feet. This was servant's work. It helped people feel comforted and refreshed after a long day. Jesus showed his disciples that they were to love and care for all people. Then they too would feel God's presence. When the disciples were having their Passover meal, Jesus took a piece of bread, broke it, and gave them each a piece. He said a special blessing over the jug of wine and poured a drink for each of them. Then he said to them, "Whenever you share bread and drink wine together, remember me." Since that night, Christians everywhere remember Jesus by sharing bread and juice or wine together. Then Jesus went out into the Garden of Gethsemane to find a quiet spot to pray. Suddenly, soldiers appeared. They grabbed Jesus, tied his hands, and led him away. The disciples were confused and frightened. They ran away, fearing that they would be arrested too. Early the next day, there was a trial. The religious leaders wanted to get rid of Jesus because they hadn't liked some of the things that he had been doing. The people shouted, "Crucify him! Crucify him!" The soldiers put a thorny crown on Jesus' head and led him away to be crucified. Jesus was put on a cross. About 3 o'clock in the afternoon, he gave a loud cry and died. The breath of life had gone out of him. For the disciples, it was the worst day of their life. Jesus was dead. They were so sad and frightened. But we know that this was not the end. God's Spirit breathed new life into Jesus. The third day, after he was killed, Jesus came to life in a new way.